Did you really think you could just move your parents into our home without asking me, Ryan? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Ryan, my husband of 6 years, looked up from his laptop with a smirk I had grown to hate. Oh, Amelia, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a while. Besides, it's not like you have a say in this. His words felt like a slap in the face. The house, a lovely 2-story in a quiet suburb, wasn't just any house. It was the home my grandparents had left me, the place where I wanted to raise our son Lucas, away from the negativity of Ryan's family. You do remember that this house is in my name, right? I shot back, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Ryan's smug look faded, replaced by a hint of uncertainty. Our 2-year-old son, Lucas, wandered into the room, oblivious to the tension. I forced a smile for him as he reached up to me with his chubby hands. I picked him up and kissed his forehead, trying to calm down. I'm not okay with this, Ryan. Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ryan shrugged, his indifference making me even more frustrated. They're family, Amelia, you wouldn't understand. Family, the word echoed in my mind mockingly. My own family, who ran a small but beloved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. They were nothing like Ryan's controlling, overbearing parents. The doorbell rang, interrupting our standoff. Through the peephole, I saw them, Ryan's parents, suitcases in tow, ready to invade our life. My heart sank. Fine, Ryan, let them in, but this isn't over, I said angrily, handing Lucas to him before opening the door. Amelia, darling, cooed Ryan's mother as she swept past me without a second glance. His father followed, a stern man who'd barely acknowledged me since our wedding day. As they made themselves comfortable in my living room, I felt a familiar sense of intrusion. This was just the beginning, I realized. But as I watched them, something inside me changed. I was done being the compliant daughter-in-law, bending to their whims. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I was ready to fight for it. The following days became a blur of unwanted changes. Ryan's mother, Elaine, had a knack for making herself overly present, which felt suffocating. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and acted as if our home belonged to her. Lucas shouldn't be eating that, Amelia. It's not healthy, Elaine scolded one morning as I prepared Lucas's breakfast. I held back a sharp reply, feeling her judgment like a slap. He's fine, Elaine. It's just cereal, she sighed, shaking her head. In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn. Her remarks felt like tiny jabs, wearing down my patience. Ryan, as usual, was no help, lost in his work and unaware of the growing tension. One evening, as I was putting Lucas to bed, Elaine barged into his room. He's still not sleeping through the night? You must be doing something wrong. Her words felt like a slap, making me doubt my abilities as a mother. I'm doing my best, I snapped back, unable to hide my frustration. Elaine's eyes narrowed. Clearly your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job and some structure in your life. Anger surged through me. This is my house, Elaine. You're a guest here. Remember that. Her laugh was cold. Oh dear, Ryan never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here. The next day, I reached my limit. I found Elaine in Lucas's room, going through his drawers. What do you think you're doing? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. I'm just organizing. This room is a mess, she replied, not even bothering to look at me. That's it. I want you out of my house. "Now," I exclaimed, feeling a mix of fury and desperation. Elaine turned to face me, her expression one of mock surprise. "Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Ryan's house, too, and he wants us here." I stormed out of the room, my mind swirling with thoughts of Ryan's betrayal, Elaine's intrusion, and how they ignored my feelings. It was too much. I was tired of being pushed around, tired of my home being invaded by people who didn't respect me. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan started forming in my mind. I was going to take back control of my life, my home, and my son's future. Ryan and his parents had crossed a line, and it was time for them to realize I wouldn't be their doormat anymore. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. A few days later, Ryan dropped a bombshell during an already tense dinner. "My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is undergoing renovations," he said casually, as if it were no big deal. I felt my anger rise. "Longer? Ryan, we never talked about them staying here in the first place." He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "It's just for a few more weeks. What's the problem?" "The problem? Your mother treats me like I don't belong in my own home," I snapped, frustration boiling over. Elaine, overhearing us, chimed in with her usual condescending tone. "Amelia, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more understanding." That night, sleep escaped me. Their words kept replaying in my mind, fueling a growing determination. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. It was time to take a stand. The next morning, I called my brother Alex, who had always been there for me. "They're taking over my life, Alex. I can't handle it anymore," I confessed, holding back tears. Alex's voice was strong and supportive. "Amelia, you have to stand up for yourself. Don't let them push you around. It's your house, your rules." His words gave me the courage I needed. I decided to talk to Ryan, but this time I would be prepared. I gathered evidence of Elaine's bossy behavior, the rearranged kitchen, the disrupted routines, her constant rude comments. The day of confrontation came. I waited until Elaine and Ryan were in the living room. "We need to talk now," I declared, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside me. Ryan looked up, taken aback by my tone. "What's going on, Amelia?" "It's about your parents, Ryan. Their constant interference, their disrespect for my boundaries." "It stops today," I declared, holding up my list of complaints. Elaine scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We're just trying to be helpful. Helpful by undermining me all the time, by treating me like I don't matter in my own home?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Ryan squirmed. "Amelia, they're my parents. We can't just ask them to leave." "No, Ryan. They're guests in my home, and they've stayed too long. Either they go or I do with Lucas," I stated firmly, my determination clear. The room fell silent, my words hanging in the air. I saw Ryan's realization, but it was Elaine who spoke first. "You wouldn't dare," she spat, her mask slipping. "Try me. I won't regret standing up for myself," I retorted, my voice filled with determination. That night, Ryan's parents packed their bags. As they left, Elaine shot me a hateful look. "You'll regret this, Amelia," she warned. But as the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the first step in taking back control of my life, and I was prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. The days after Elaine and her husband left were strangely quiet. Ryan's attitude towards me became cold and distant, our interactions minimal and strained. Yet, I found comfort in the peace of my home and the joyful laughter of Lucas. One evening, as Lucas played with his toys, Ryan announced, "I have to go on a business trip. I'll be gone for a few weeks. His tone was indifferent, as if our troubled relationship had taken a back seat to his work. Fine, I replied sharply, barely able to hide my relief at the thought of his absence. After Ryan left, the atmosphere in the house shifted, feeling liberating. I started undoing the changes Elaine had made, each adjustment feeling like a small victory. But the real turning point came when I stumbled upon a series of emails on Ryan's laptop, left carelessly open. They revealed an affair, a betrayal that cut deeper than any of his mother's snide remarks. Anger, hurt, and a sense of betrayal swirled inside me. I knew it was time for Ryan to face the consequences. I began planning my next moves meticulously, each step aimed at making Ryan and his family answer for their deceit and manipulation. First, I secured my financial and legal position. I contacted a lawyer, explained my situation, and started the divorce proceedings. Then, I focused on the house, a symbol of my grandparents' legacy and my independence. I reached out to a real estate agent. I want to sell the house quickly and quietly, I told her. She was surprised, but could sense the urgency in my voice. Are you sure about this, Amelia? Selling the house is a big step, she warned. I've never been more certain, I replied, fueled by a mix of betrayal and newfound determination. The house went on the market, and offers came in quickly. The idea of Ryan returning to find his control gone brought a bittersweet satisfaction. In the midst of all this, I leaned on my family for support. My parents were shocked by Ryan's actions and stood by me and Lucas. We're here for you, no matter what, my father assured me. Watching Lucas play, unaffected by the chaos, I silently promised to shield his happiness. Ryan's return was inevitable, but I was no longer the same person he left. Armed with truth and a plan, I was ready to confront him and take back my life. The day Ryan returned was heavy with tension. I had played out this moment in my head countless times, imagining every possible scenario, yet my heart raced as I heard his key turn in the lock. Amelia, I'm back, Ryan called out, his voice filling the now unfamiliar space. I stepped out from the kitchen, my stance firm. Welcome home, Ryan. We need to talk. He glanced around, noticing the changes I'd made. What's going on? The house looks different. I didn't falter. I sold the house, Ryan. It's no longer ours. Disbelief washed over his face. You did what? You can't just sell our house without telling me. It's my house, Ryan. And after what I found out, I don't think you get to say anything anymore, I said. My voice steady, but tinged with simmering anger. He scoffed, trying to regain control. What are you talking about? The affair, Ryan. I know everything, I revealed, watching as his facade crumbled. His attempt to deny it was feeble and short-lived. Amelia, it's not what you think. I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me, our family, I retorted, the hurt clear in my voice. Ryan's expression shifted from shock to anger. You're overreacting. We can fix this. There's no we anymore, Ryan. I filed for divorce, I declared, handing him the papers. The ensuing conversation was a blur of accusations and denials, but I stood my ground. The man I married was gone, replaced by a stranger driven by selfish desires. As he stormed out, vowing to contest the divorce, I felt a mix of freedom and apprehension. I had taken the first step toward a new life, but the fight was far from over. In the following weeks, our situation became public. Ryan's once imposing parents were now entangled in their son's mess. Their attempts to reach out were met with silence. I had cut ties with them, focusing solely on Lucas and finalizing the divorce. The day of the court hearing arrived. Ryan looked defeated, the consequences of his actions finally sinking in. As the judge granted the divorce and custody of Lucas to me, I felt a sense of justice. Ryan's plea for reconciliation after the hearing fell on deaf ears. "You made your choice, Ryan. Now you have to live with it," I said, turning away from him for the last time. News of our divorce and Ryan's affair spread, tarnishing his reputation in relationships. His once proud and judgmental parents found themselves shunned by those who had once respected them. Walking out of the courthouse, holding Lucas's hand, I realized this wasn't just an end but a new beginning, a chance for me and my son to start fresh, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. I had regained control, not just of the house, now sold, but of my life. Lucas, unaware of the grown-up troubles, flourished in the love and stability I provided. My days were busy but fulfilling, focused on rebuilding our lives and running the coffee shop, my sanctuary. The shadow of Ryan and his parents lingered, casting a pall over my life. One day, as I was closing the shop, Ryan appeared, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I had once known. "Amelia, please, I need to talk to you," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for a glimmer of the compassion we once shared. I hesitated, torn by conflicting emotions. "What do you want, Ryan?" "It's about the alimony and child support," he began, his voice filled with embarrassment. "I can't afford it. I lost my job because of the scandal, and my parents, they're struggling too." His words hit me like a cold shock. "That's not my problem, Ryan. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." "But Amelia, I have nothing left. Please, for old time's sake," he begged, his voice breaking with despair. I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly overtaken by the memory of his betrayal. Old time's sake, those times are gone, Ryan. You should have thought about the consequences before you cheated and lied. I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Truly I am. I was a fool, and I ruined everything. Please help me." For a moment, I glimpsed the man I once loved, vulnerable and regretful. But the pain he had caused was too deep, the betrayal too raw. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own," I said firmly, closing the chapter of our shared past for good. As I walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had led me to a place of strength and independence. Life moved on. Lucas grew, his laughter and curiosity bringing joy to our home. The coffee shop thrived, becoming a place of warmth and community. And as for me, I found contentment in simple pleasures. The aroma of fresh coffee, the sound of Lucas's giggles, and the support of loved ones. Ryan and his parents became distant memories, their legacy a reminder of the consequences of betrayal. My journey taught me resilience and the importance of standing up for oneself. As I locked the shop that evening, I looked up at the sky, its hues signaling the end of another day. I smiled, holding Lucas's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain, but it was bright. We were moving forward step by step into a new chapter of our lives.
Marrying him might have saved my life, but living with him almost destroyed it. Those haunting words echoed in my mind as I stared at the ornate mirror, the golden frame, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. It had all started with a chance encounter at a charity gala, where Alex Preston's charming smile and captivating presence had swept me off my feet. A whirlwind courtship followed, filled with lavish dates, heartfelt promises, and the assurance that he was the man of my dreams. Little did I know that underneath that polished exterior lurked a web of deceit so tangled that it would almost suffocate me. "Eliza, darling, are you ready?" Alex's voice drifted through the bedroom door, snapping me back to reality. "Just a minute," I called out, forcing a smile onto my face as I smoothed the silky fabric of my dress. As I stepped out, Alex's eyes raked over me appreciatively. "You look stunning, my love." He leaned in, planting a kiss on my cheek, his familiar cologne enveloping me. The ride to the Preston family estate was filled with idle chatter, but my mind wandered to the events that had brought me here. Barely 6 months ago, I had been a carefree, independent woman, content with my career and social circle. Then Alex swept in, spinning tales of undying love and a future filled with happiness. Little did I know that by accepting his proposal, I was stepping into a gilded cage. The estate loomed before us, its imposing architecture a testament to the family's wealth and prestige. As we entered, a figure emerged from the shadows, her sharp gaze immediately fixing on me. "Vivian, I'd like you to meet my wife, Eliza," Alex said, his voice tinged with pride. Vivian, Alex's older sister, offered a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to the family, Eliza." In that moment, I sensed an undercurrent of tension, a subtle warning that all was not as it seemed within the walls of this grand estate. As the evening progressed, surrounded by Alex's closest friends and business associates, I found myself drowning in a sea of polite conversations and forced smiles. Vivian's calculating glances only added to my growing unease. It wasn't until later, when the guests had dispersed and Alex had retired for the night, that I allowed myself to confront the nagging doubts that had taken root. Seated in the dimly lit library, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had entered a world far more complex and dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The question was, would I have the strength to untangle myself from this web before it consumed me completely? The grand foyer of the Preston estate should have filled me with awe, but instead, a sense of unease crept over me as I stepped inside my new home. The opulent chandeliers cast a warm glow, yet the atmosphere felt chilly and unwelcoming. "Let me show you around," Alex said, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back as he guided me through the winding corridors. Each room was more extravagant than the last, from the sprawling living area adorned with priceless antiques to the state-of-the-art kitchen that could have belonged in a 5-star restaurant. It was a world of wealth and privilege I had never experienced before. "And this will be our bedroom," Alex announced, pushing open a set of double doors to reveal a lavish suite that could have easily accommodated a small palace. As I took in the plush furnishings and the breathtaking view from the floor-to-ceiling windows, a movement in the corner of my eye caught my attention. Vivian stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her gaze piercing. "Impressive, isn't it?" she remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. "I hope you'll be comfortable here, Eliza." Before I could respond, Alex stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from doting husband to protective brother. "Vivian, I thought we discussed this. Eliza is my wife now, and she deserves to be treated with respect." Vivian's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I could have sworn I saw a flicker of contempt cross her features. "Of course, dear brother, I wouldn't dream of making your precious wife feel unwelcome." With a curt nod, she turned on her heel and disappeared down the hallway, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. "Don't mind her," Alex murmured, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Vivian has always been a little difficult." His touch, once comforting, now felt suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to this sibling rivalry than met the eye. Over the next few weeks, I found myself walking on eggshells, constantly navigating the minefield of tensions that permeated the estate. Vivian's presence was like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over every interaction, her cutting remarks and icy glares leaving me feeling unsettled and unwelcome in my own home. "You shouldn't let her get to you," Alex would say, his reassuring words ringing hollow in the face of Vivian's open hostility. But it wasn't just Vivian's behavior that set my nerves on edge. There were subtle shifts in Alex's demeanor, too. The way he would dismiss my concerns with a wave of his hand, or the way his touch would linger a little too long, as if he were trying to assert his dominance. It was during one of these moments, as he gripped my arm a little too tightly while chastising me for some perceived misstep, that I caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, a flicker of cruelty that sent shivers down my spine. In that instant, I realized that the man I had married was not the charming, loving soul he had pretended to be. There was a darkness lurking beneath the surface, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about him. As I lay awake that night, Alex's even breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had somehow become trapped in a gilded cage with no idea how to escape. The sound of raised voices echoed through the study, shattering the usual tranquility of the estate. Curiosity got the better of me as I crept closer, the muffled words becoming clearer. "Can't keep sweeping this under the rug, Alex. The shareholders are getting restless." It was Vivian's voice, sharp and accusatory. My heart raced as I pressed my ear against the door, straining to make out Alex's response. "I have it under control," he snapped, his tone laced with irritation. "The last thing we need is for word to get out about our creative accounting practices." Creative accounting practices? My mind whirled as the implications of those words sank in. Could Alex be involved in something illegal? Before I could ponder further, the sound of footsteps approaching sent me scurrying away from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I busied myself with straightening the vase on the hallway table, trying to appear nonchalant as Vivian emerged from the study, her face flushed with anger. "Eliza," she said curtly, her gaze sweeping over me with undisguised disdain. "I didn't realize you were lurking about." "I wasn't," I stammered, my palms growing clammy. "I was just passing by." Vivian's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might call out my lie. But then, her expression softened ever so slightly, and she leaned in closer. "You should be careful, Eliza," she murmured, her voice low and laced with warning. "There are things happening in this family that you know nothing about." Before I could respond, she had swept past me, leaving me reeling in her wake. What did she mean by that? Was she implying that Alex was involved in something illegal, something that could put our entire family at risk? The questions swirled in my mind, but I knew better than to confront Alex directly. Instead, I bided my time, keeping my eyes and ears open for any clue that might shed light on the shadows that seemed to be closing in around us. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon my first piece of evidence. Late one night, as Alex worked at his desk in the study, I slipped in under the guise of bringing him a nightcap. As I placed the glass on the desk, a folder caught my eye, a collection of financial statements and ledgers, their pages littered with suspicious-looking entries and crossed-out figures. My heart pounded as I glimpsed the words Shell Corporation and Offshore Accounts scrawled in the margins. I knew then that my suspicions were well-founded. Alex was involved in something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. As the weeks passed, I became a silent observer, gathering what information I could while maintaining a careful facade of ignorance. Whispered conversations, coded emails, and furtive glances all added to the mounting pile of evidence that pointed to one inescapable truth. My husband was a liar and a cheat, and the very foundation of our marriage was built on deceit. Yet even as the walls closed in around us, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope that perhaps I could find a way to untangle this tangled web before it consumed us both. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast eerie shadows across the room as I pored over the documents scattered on the desk. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each one revealing a new layer of Alex's deception. Financial statements riddled with discrepancies, emails detailing shady business dealings, and a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The evidence was damning, and yet a part of me still clung to the hope that there was some innocent explanation, some misunderstanding that could justify the chaos unfolding before my eyes. It was then that the ping of an incoming message shattered the silence, the sound making me jump. Alex's phone vibrated on the nightstand, the screen illuminating with a new notification. Against my better judgment, I reached for it, my heart pounding in my chest. The message was innocuous at first glance. A simple, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow" from a contact labeled Jessica. But as I scrolled further, my breath caught in my throat. Message after message, each one more explicit than the last, painted a clear picture of Alex's infidelity. Missing your touch. Counting down the hours until I can hold you again. You know how much I crave you. The words blurred together as hot tears stung my eyes. The man I had trusted, the man I had loved with every fiber of my being, had been deceiving me from the start. His promises of devotion were nothing but hollow lies, his vows of fidelity cast aside with callous disregard. The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted me back to reality, and I scrambled to gather the scattered documents, my hands shaking uncontrollably. In my haste, I knocked over a picture frame, the shattering glass echoing like a gunshot in the stillness of the night. The bedroom door flew open, and there stood Alex, his face contorted in a mixture of anger and fear. "What the hell are you doing?" he snarled, his eyes landing on the incriminating papers clutched in my trembling hands. My voice faltered as I struggled to form a coherent response, the weight of his betrayal crushing me from all sides. Alex's gaze hardened, and he advanced towards me, his movements slow and deliberate, like a predator closing in on its prey. "You weren't supposed to see those," he hissed, snatching the documents from my grasp. "Alex, please?" I pleaded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Just tell me the truth." For a moment, his expression softened, and I dared to hope that he might offer an explanation, a chance to salvage the shattered remnants of our relationship. But then, his lips twisted into a cruel smile, and the illusion was shattered. "The truth?" he sneered, leaning in close enough for me to smell the whiskey on his breath. "The truth is, you're nothing but a means to an end, Eliza, a pretty little trophy wife to help me maintain appearances while I take care of business." His words cut deep, each one a razor-sharp blade slicing through the fragile threads that had bound us together. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back, no chance for reconciliation. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a monster driven by greed and deceit. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone," Alex continued, his grip tightening around my wrist until I winced in pain, "I'll make sure you regret the day you ever crossed me." As he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs. The world as I knew it had come crashing down around me, leaving me adrift in a sea of lies and broken promises. But even as despair threatened to consume me, a flicker of determination ignited deep within. I would not be a victim, not anymore. It was time to take back control, no matter the cost. The heavy oak door creaked open, and Vivian slipped into the dimly lit library, her eyes scanning the room before settling on me. "Eliza, what's going on?" "Your message sounded urgent." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "I know everything, Vivian, about Alex's illegal activities, his offshore accounts, his mistress." Vivian's expression hardened, and for a moment I thought she might deny it all. But then her shoulders sagged, and she sank into the nearest armchair, defeat etched across her features. "So, he finally showed his true colors," she muttered, her voice laced with bitterness. "I tried to warn you, Eliza, but you were too blinded by his charm to see the monster he really is." "You knew?" I felt a surge of anger rising within me. "You knew what he was up to, and you didn't say anything?" Vivian's gaze met mine, her eyes filled with a mixture of remorse and determination. I had my suspicions, but I could never get my hands on any solid proof. That snake always covered his tracks too well. "Well, now we have the proof," I said, sliding the stack of incriminating documents across the table towards her. "And we're going to use it to bring him down." Vivian's perfectly manicured brows arched in surprise. "We? You want to take over the company, don't you?" I pressed on, my voice gaining strength with each word. "Well, this is our chance. Together, we can expose Alex's misdeeds and get him out of the way for good." A slow smile spread across Vivian's face, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of respect in her eyes. "I have to admit, I underestimated you, Eliza. You've got more fire in you than I gave you credit for." She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "All right, let's do this, but we have to be smart about it. Alex is a snake, and he'll stop at nothing to protect his precious empire." Over the next few days, Vivian and I pored over the evidence, meticulously cataloging every shred of proof, every damning email and suspicious transaction. It was a delicate dance, carefully planning our next moves while maintaining a facade of normalcy around Alex. The tension in the house was palpable, with Alex constantly on edge, his eyes narrowed in suspicion whenever Vivian and I were in the same room. But we played our parts well, acting the dutiful wife and the supportive sister, all the while plotting his downfall. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Vivian asked one night as we finalized our strategy. "Once we set this in motion, there's no going back." I thought of Alex's cruel words, the way he had threatened and belittled me, and a steely resolve settled over me. "I'm ready. He's going to pay for what he's done, one way or another." The day of the board meeting arrived, and Vivian and I took our seats at the long mahogany table, our game faces firmly in place. Alex strode in, his confidence barely masking the undercurrent of tension that rippled through the room. As he launched into his polished presentation, projecting financial figures and growth projections onto the screen behind him, I caught Vivian's eye. A slight nod was all it took, and we made our move. "Actually, Alex," Vivian's voice cut through the air like a knife, "I think we should take a closer look at those numbers." Alex faltered, his bravado slipping for just a moment as Vivian began pulling up document after document, laying bare the truth about his misdeeds. The room erupted into chaos, with board members demanding explanations and lawyers scrambling to take notes. Through it all, Alex maintained a veneer of composure, his eyes darting between Vivian and me with a mixture of fury and disbelief. But as the evidence mounted, as the weight of his lies threatened to crush him, the mask finally slipped. "You'll pay for this, Eliza," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "Mark my words, you'll regret the day you crossed me." But as I met his gaze, unflinching, I knew that the power had finally shifted. The tangled web of lies he had woven was unraveling before our very eyes, and there was no escape for the monster at its center. The boardroom descended into chaos as the full extent of Alex's deception was laid bare. Lawyers scribbled furiously, shareholders hurled accusations, and through it all, Alex stood frozen, his face contorted in a mask of fury. "How dare you?" he snarled, rounding on Vivian and me. "You have no idea what you've done." Vivian met his gaze, unflinching. "We know exactly what we've done, dear brother. We've exposed you for the liar and fraud that you are." A vein throbbed in Alex's temple as he struggled to maintain his composure. "This is all a misunderstanding," he insisted, his voice strained. "I can explain." "Save it, Alex," one of the board members snapped. "The evidence is overwhelming. Your underhanded dealings, the offshore accounts, the financial manipulations, it's all right here in black and white." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and I could see the panic flickering in Alex's eyes as his carefully constructed facade crumbled around him. "You're making a grave mistake," he warned, his gaze shifting to me. "You'll regret this, Eliza." I squared my shoulders, refusing to be intimidated by his empty threats. "The only mistake was ever trusting you." As security guards moved in to escort him out, Alex lunged forward, his face twisted into an ugly snarl. "You'll pay for this, you little bitch!" Strong arms restrained him, but not before his fist connected with the side of my face, sending stars bursting across my vision. I stumbled backward, clutching my throbbing cheek, as Vivian rushed to my side. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I nodded, blinking back tears of pain and humiliation. "I'm fine. It's nothing compared to what he deserves." As Alex was dragged from the room, his curses and threats echoing down the hallway, a heavy silence settled over the boardroom. It was finally over. The tangled web of lies that had ensnared us all had been severed, and the monster at its center was exposed for the world to see. In the days and weeks that followed, the fallout from Alex's downfall rippled outward, like shockwaves from a seismic event. Lawsuits were filed, investigations launched, and the once mighty Preston empire teetered on the brink of collapse. Through it all, Vivian remained a steadfast ally, guiding the company through the turbulent waters with a deft hand. Together, we worked tirelessly to salvage what remained, to rebuild the tarnished reputation and restore the trust that Alex had so carelessly squandered. It wasn't easy. There were whispers and pointed stares, accusations and innuendo that threatened to drag us down into the mire of scandal. But we persevered, driven by a shared determination to rise from the ashes and forge a new path forward. As for Alex, his world crumbled around him in spectacular fashion. The once charming, larger-than-life figure was reduced to a mere shadow of his former self, his arrogance replaced by desperation as his allies deserted him one by one. I watched from afar as his lavish lifestyle unraveled, his expensive suits traded for prison jumpsuits, his palatial estate seized by the authorities. It was a fate he had brought upon himself, and yet a part of me still felt a twinge of sadness at the sight of his downfall. But that fleeting moment of pity was quickly overshadowed by a sense of triumph and relief. The nightmare was finally over. The tangled web that had ensnared me was no more, and I was free to reclaim the life that had been stolen from me. As I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, taking in the simple furnishings and the warm sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind and forge a new path on my own terms. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while I felt a glimmer of hope. I was no longer a victim, no longer a pawn in someone else's twisted game. I was a survivor, a warrior who had stared down the darkness and emerged victorious. And as I stepped out into the world, head held high, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same unwavering resilience that had carried me through the storm. The headline screamed Alex's downfall, plastered across every newspaper and news channel in the country. Business mogul exposed as fraud, Preston empire crumbles amidst scandal, each headline more sensational than the last. As I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the sordid details of his misdeeds, a part of me still couldn't believe how swiftly everything had unraveled. Just weeks ago, Alex had been the picture of success, a titan of industry with the world at his feet. Now he was a disgraced pariah, his name synonymous with deceit and corruption. The real surprise, however, came in the form of the public's reaction. Instead of sympathy or outrage on his behalf, there was a pervasive sense of schadenfreude, a collective glee at witnessing the fall of a man who had lived so ostentatiously, so arrogantly. He had it coming, one commentator declared on a primetime news program. A man like that, with his penchant for excess and his blatant disregard for the rules, was bound to come crashing down eventually. As the days passed, the avalanche of negative publicity only intensified. Former business associates and allies distanced themselves, scrambling to salvage their own reputations. Even Alex's closest confidants turned on him, offering damning testimonies in exchange for leniency from the authorities. Through it all, Vivian remained a steadfast presence by my side, guiding the company through the turbulent waters with a deft hand. Together, we worked tirelessly to reshape the narrative, to restore the trust and credibility that had been shattered by Alex's actions. It wasn't an easy task. There were skeptics at every turn, those who doubted our ability to rise from the ashes of such a colossal scandal. But Vivian was relentless, her determination fueled by a burning desire to reclaim her family's legacy. This company was built on generations of hard work and integrity, she declared in a press conference, her steely gaze fixed on the cameras. We will not allow one man's greed and hubris to tarnish that. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Alex's once formidable empire crumbled around him. Assets were seized, bank accounts frozen, and his lavish lifestyle reduced to a mere memory. Gone were the designer suits and luxury cars, replaced by the drab uniforms and sterile confines of a prison cell. I caught glimpses of him during the highly publicized trial, his once confident demeanor replaced by a haunted, defeated expression. It was a far cry from the charming, charismatic figure who had once swept me off my feet, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity amidst the overwhelming sense of vindication. But that fleeting moment of empathy was quickly overshadowed by the memories of his cruelty, the way he had manipulated and betrayed me without a shred of remorse. This was the fate he had chosen for himself, and he would have to live with the consequences. As the final gavel fell, sealing Alex's fate with a lengthy prison sentence, a palpable sense of relief washed over me. The nightmare was finally over, the tangled web of lies that had ensnared me severed for good. In the aftermath, Vivian stepped forward to assume the mantle of leadership, her steady hand guiding the company through the turbulent waters of rebranding and restructuring. Under her guidance, the once tarnished empire began to regain its footing, slowly but surely clawing its way back to respectability. As for me, I found solace in the simplicity of my new life. Gone were the lavish trappings and the constant scrutiny that had once been my reality. In their place was a newfound sense of freedom, a chance to start anew without the suffocating weight of Alex's lies and manipulations. It wasn't an easy journey, of course. There were moments of doubt and vulnerability, times when the ghosts of the past threatened to drag me back into the darkness. But each time, I drew strength from the knowledge that I had survived, that I had emerged from the fire stronger and more resilient than ever before. As the months passed, the wounds began to heal, and a newfound sense of clarity took root. I was no longer defined by the trauma of my past, no longer a victim of circumstances beyond my control. I was a survivor, a warrior who had stared down the abyss and emerged victorious. And as I stepped out into the world, head held high, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same unwavering determination that had carried me through the storm. The sun filtered through the sheer curtains, bathing my new apartment in a warm, golden glow. It was a far cry from the opulent grandeur of the Preston estate, but as I sipped my morning coffee, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was my sanctuary, my safe haven from the chaos and turmoil of the past. Gone were the lavish trappings and the suffocating weight of expectation. In their place was a simple, uncluttered existence, a life of my own making, free from the tangled web of lies and manipulation that had once threatened to consume me. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie, and I padded across the hardwood floor to answer it. Vivian stood on the other side, her signature power suit traded for a casual sundress, her face radiant with a genuine smile. "Good morning," she greeted me warmly, enveloping me in a sisterly embrace. "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're settling in." I ushered her inside, marveling at how far our relationship had come. Months ago, we had been adversaries, caught in the crosshairs of Alex's deceit. Now, we were allies, bound by a shared experience that had forged an unbreakable bond of trust and respect. "It's perfect," I assured her, gesturing around the cozy living room. "Simple, but perfect." Vivian nodded, her eyes sweeping over the space with a critical but approving gaze. "I'm glad. You deserve a fresh start, Eliza, a chance to rebuild your life on your own terms." We settled onto the plush sofa, and I couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in Vivian's demeanor. Gone was the sharp, calculating persona she had once worn like armor. In its place was a warmth and vulnerability that I had never seen before. "How are things at the company?" I asked, sipping my coffee. Vivian's smile faltered ever so slightly, a hint of weariness creeping into her expression. "It's been a challenge, to say the least. Rebuilding the brand, restoring trust with our partners and shareholders, it's been an uphill battle." "But you're doing it," I reassured her. "You're turning things around, slowly but surely." A spark of pride flickered in her eyes, and she nodded resolutely. "Yes, we are. It's not easy, but I'm determined to reclaim our family's legacy, to show the world that the Preston name still stands for something." As we lapsed into comfortable silence, I couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey we had both undertaken. From the depths of despair and betrayal, we had risen like phoenixes from the ashes, emerging stronger and more resilient than ever before. The legal battles had been grueling, the emotional toll nearly overwhelming at times. But through it all, we had remained resolute, steadfast in our determination to see justice served and our lives restored. And now, as I looked around my humble abode, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for the strength that had carried me through the darkest of times, and for the unwavering support of the woman who had become more than just an ally. She was family, in the truest sense of the word. "Eliza," Vivian's voice broke the silence, her tone earnest. "I know words can never undo the trauma you endured, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for not seeing the truth sooner." I reached out, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "You have nothing to apologize for, Vivian. We were both caught in Alex's web of lies. The important thing is that we found our way out, together." A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips, and she nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and understanding. In that moment, I knew that the scars of the past would never fully fade. The memories of Alex's cruelty, the bitter taste of betrayal, would always linger in the shadows of my mind. But I had emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient than ever before. As I bid farewell to Vivian and settled back into the comfort of my new home, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of hope for the future. The tangled web that had once threatened to strangle me was severed, the monster at its center vanquished, and I was free to chart my own course. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of excitement rather than trepidation. I was no longer a victim, defined by the trauma of my past. I was a survivor, a warrior who had stared down the abyss and emerged victorious. And as I gazed out at the bustling city skyline, a world of possibilities stretched before me, waiting to be embraced with open arms. The necklace glinted in the dim light of our bedroom, its delicate silver chain coiled like a serpent on my palm. I stared at it, my heart pounding, as the implications of its presence under our bed sank in. This wasn't mine. It wasn't Amy's. There was only one explanation, and it made me sick to my stomach. "Mommy, can we have ice cream?" Amy's voice floated up from downstairs, snapping me back to reality. I quickly shoved the necklace into my pocket. "Just a minute, sweetie," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. As I made my way downstairs, I could hear Doug in the kitchen, his laptop keys clicking away. He barely looked up as I entered. "Hey, can you grab Amy some ice cream?" "I'm in the middle of this proposal," he said, not taking his eyes off the screen. I clenched my jaw, fighting back the urge to confront him right then and there. "Sure," I managed, opening the freezer. "Amy, come get your ice cream." Our 3-year-old came bounding in, pigtails bouncing. "Yay! Thanks, Mommy." As I scooped the ice cream, I watched Doug out of the corner of my eye. He seemed so normal, so unaffected. How could he sit there, acting like everything was fine, when there was clear evidence of his betrayal burning a hole in my pocket? "Doug, we need to talk," I said, my voice low and tense. He finally looked up, his brow furrowing. "Can it wait? I'm really swamped with this freelance gig." "No, it can't," I snapped, louder than I intended. Amy looked up from her ice cream, her eyes wide. Doug sighed, closing his laptop. "All right, what's so urgent?" I glanced at Amy, then back at him. "Not here. Upstairs. Now." He followed me reluctantly, leaving Amy to her dessert. As soon as we were in our bedroom, I whirled on him. "Want to explain this?" I hissed, pulling out the necklace. Doug's face paled, but he quickly composed himself. "Where did you find that?" "Under our bed. Care to tell me who it belongs to?" He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I knew all too well. "Mel, it's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I cut him off. "Because what I think is that you're cheating on me. Am I wrong?" "Of course you're wrong," he exclaimed, his voice rising. "How could you even think that?" I laughed bitterly. "How could I not? You've been distant for months, always working on your laptop, and now this." I dangled the necklace in front of him. "Don't lie to me, Doug." He reached for the necklace, but I snatched it away. It's a gift," he stammered. "For you, for our anniversary next month." I was hiding it. I stared at him, incredulous. "Our anniversary isn't for another 3 months, Doug, and this isn't my style. You know that." His face fell, caught in the lie. "Mel, please, it's not." "Don't," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Just don't. I can't believe you do this to us, to Amy." As if on cue, Amy's voice drifted up from downstairs. "Mommy? Daddy, where are you?" Doug moved towards the door, but I blocked his path. "We're not done here," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "What do you want me to say?" he asked, exasperated. "The truth would be nice," I spat. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, seeing a text from Sophie, my mother. "Everything okay, dear? You seemed off when we talked earlier." I looked back at Doug, his face a mixture of guilt and defiance. In that moment, I made a decision. "This isn't over," I told him, pocketing the necklace. "But right now, our daughter needs us. We'll finish this later." As I brushed past him to go downstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives had just changed irrevocably. The necklace weighed heavy in my pocket, a tangible reminder of the betrayal that threatened to tear our family apart. But as I plastered on a smile for Amy, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going down without a fight. The playgroup bustled with activity as I dropped Amy off, my eyes scanning the room for Lucy. She stood in the corner, her blonde hair perfectly styled, laughing with another parent. My stomach churned at the sight of her. "Melissa, good morning," Lucy chirped, waving me over. I plastered on a smile and approached, Amy clinging to my leg. "Morning, Lucy," I replied, my voice tight. "Amy, sweetie, why don't you go play with your friends?" As Amy scampered off, Lucy leaned in conspiratorially. I'm so glad you're here early. I wanted to chat about the upcoming parent-teacher meetings. I nodded, barely listening as she prattled on about schedules. My eyes were drawn to her neck, where a familiar silver chain glinted. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. Lucy, I interrupted, my voice trembling, that's a beautiful necklace. Where did you get it? She touched it, smiling. Oh, this old thing. It was a gift from a friend. The room spun. I gripped the nearest table to steady myself. A friend? Lucy's smile faltered for a moment. Yes, just a friend. Is everything okay, Melissa? You look pale. I forced a laugh. I'm fine. Just tired. Listen, I've got to run. Work calls. I practically fled the playgroup, my mind racing. The necklace. Lucy. Doug. It all made horrible sense now. The day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus at work, my thoughts consumed by what I'd seen. By the time I picked up Amy and headed home, I was a bundle of nerves. Doug was already there when we arrived, playing with his phone on the couch. He looked up, smiling. Hey, how was your day? I ignored him, turning to Amy. Sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy and Daddy need to talk. Once Amy was upstairs, I rounded on Doug. I saw Lucy today, I said, my voice low and dangerous. He frowned. Okay? And? She was wearing the necklace, Doug, the one I found under our bed. The color drained from his face. Mel, I can explain. Don't you dare, I hissed. How long has this been going on? How could you do this to us? Doug stood, reaching for me. It's not what you think. Lucy and I were just what? I spat. Friends? Is that why you're giving her jewelry? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. It's complicated, Mel. I've been going through some things. Oh, spare me, I interrupted. What about what I've been going through, working full-time, taking care of Amy, supporting your decision to freelance? And this is how you repay me? Doug's face hardened. Maybe if you weren't so focused on work all the time, you'd see what's really going on. I recoiled as if slapped. Are you seriously blaming me for your affair? It's not an affair, he shouted, then lowered his voice, glancing towards Amy's room. Lucy understands me. She listens. Tears stung my eyes. And I don't? Is that what you're saying? Before he could answer, my phone rang. It was Sophie, my mother. I answered, turning away from Doug. Mom, now's not a good time, I said, my voice shaky. Honey, what's wrong? Sophie asked, concern evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, glancing at Doug. He was watching me, his face a mixture of guilt and defiance. Everything, I whispered into the phone. Can you come over? I need you. As I hung up, Doug stepped towards me. Mel, please, let's talk about this. I held up a hand, stopping him. No, I'm done talking. My mother's coming over, and you're going to leave. I can't even look at you right now. He opened his mouth to protest, but something in my expression must have stopped him. Without another word, he grabbed his keys and left. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, sobs racking my body. How had we come to this? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? The front door creaked open, and I hastily wiped my tears away. Sophie rushed in, her face etched with concern. Melissa, honey, what's going on? She enveloped me in a hug, and I crumbled against her. It's Doug, I choked out. He's having an affair. Sophie stiffened. That no-good son of a... She caught herself, glancing towards Amy's room. Are you sure? I nodded, recounting the necklace incident and my confrontation with Doug. Sophie's face darkened with each word. I'll kill him, she muttered. Mom, please, I sighed. I need to figure out what to do next. Before she could respond, the front door opened again. Doug strode in, his jaw set. I thought I told you to leave, I hissed. This is my house too, Mel, he retorted. We need to talk. Sophie stepped between us. You've got some nerve, Doug. He ignored her, focusing on me. Melissa, please, let me explain. Explain what? I snapped. How you've been lying to me, sneaking around with Amy's teacher? Doug's face flushed. It's not like that. Lucy and I, we connected. She understands the pressure I'm under. I laughed bitterly. Oh, the pressure you're under? What about me, Doug? I've been carrying this family while you chase your freelance dreams. That's not fair, he shot back. I'm trying to build something for us, for Amy's future. By sleeping with her teacher? Sophie interjected. Doug whirled on her. This doesn't concern you, Sophie. The hell it doesn't, she growled. That's my daughter and granddaughter you're hurting. I held up a hand, silencing them both. Doug, I want you out, tonight. His eyes widened. Mel, come on, we can work this out. Work what out? I asked, my voice trembling. The trust you've shattered? The family you've torn apart. Doug's shoulders sagged. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, I spat. You made a choice. Now I'm making mine. A small voice interrupted us. Mommy? Daddy? We all turned to see Amy at the foot of the stairs, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her eyes were wide with fear. Why is everyone yelling? She whimpered. I rushed to her, scooping her up. It's okay, sweetie. Mommy and Daddy were just having a grown-up talk. Doug approached us, reaching for Amy. I instinctively pulled back. Don't, I warned. His face crumpled. Mel, please. She's my daughter, too. Sophie stepped in, gently taking Amy from me. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go make some hot chocolate while Mommy and Daddy finish talking. As they disappeared into the kitchen, I turned back to Doug. I want you gone by morning. You can see Amy, but it'll be on my terms. You can't do this, he protested. We need to think about what's best for Amy. I am thinking about Amy, I retorted. She deserves better than a father who lies and cheats. Doug's face hardened. Fine, if that's how you want to play it, I'll go. But this isn't over, Melissa. As he stormed upstairs to pack, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. How had we come to this? The man I'd loved, the father of my child, was now a stranger to me. Sophie returned, sitting beside me. He's leaving? I nodded, unable to speak. She squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing, honey. It'll be hard, but you're strong. You'll get through this. I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face. What if I can't? What if I'm not strong enough? Sophie's eyes flashed with determination. Then I'll be strong for you. We'll face this together, Melissa. You're not alone. As Doug's footsteps echoed above us, packing his life into suitcases, I clung to my mother's words. I wasn't alone, and somehow, someway, I would find the strength to rebuild my life, for myself and for Amy. The house felt emptier without Doug, but I couldn't decide if that was a good or bad thing. Amy kept asking where Daddy was, and each time my heart broke a little more. I'd told her he was on a work trip, but I knew that excuse wouldn't hold for long. One afternoon, while Amy napped, I found myself drawn to Doug's home office. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the knob. Did I really want to do this, to invade his privacy? But then I remembered the necklace, Lucy's smug face, and my resolve hardened. The room was a mess, papers strewn everywhere. I started with his desk drawers, rifling through documents and old receipts, nothing incriminating. His laptop sat on the desk, tempting me. I knew his password, or at least I thought I did. To my surprise, it worked. As I scrolled through his emails, my stomach churned. There were dozens of messages from Lucy, each more intimate than the last. They detailed meetups, shared jokes, and plans for the future. My future. Our future. I felt sick, but it was a folder labeled Melissa that caught my eye. With trembling hands, I clicked it open. Inside were screenshots of text messages, our text messages. Every argument, every cold exchange meticulously documented, and below them, notes. Melissa overreacting again. Another late night at work. Does she even care about this family? Tears blurred my vision. How long had he been planning this? Documenting our downfall? A noise from the hallway made me jump. I quickly closed the laptop, my heart racing. It was just Amy, stirring in her sleep. I slumped back in the chair, overwhelmed. I had my evidence now, but at what cost? The Doug I knew, the man I married, was truly gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Doug. Can we talk? I miss Amy. I ignored it, focusing instead on the laptop. I needed to document what I'd found before he had a chance to delete it all. With shaky hands, I began taking photos of the screen, capturing every damning email and note. As I worked, another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Hi, Melissa. It's Lucy. We need to talk about Doug. My blood boiled. The audacity of this woman. I typed out a scathing reply, then deleted it. No, I needed to be smarter than that. Instead, I wrote, Fine, meet me at Rosie's Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Her reply was almost immediate. I'll be there. I set the phone down, my mind racing. What could Lucy possibly have to say? Was this a trap? Or did she have information I needed? As if on cue, Amy's voice called out from her room. Mommy? Where's Daddy? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. How much longer could I keep this charade up? How much longer should I? I went to Amy's room, sitting on the edge of her bed. Her innocent eyes looked up at me, full of trust and love. In that moment, I made a decision. Sweetie, I said softly, Daddy and Mommy are going through some grown-up problems right now, but I want you to know that we both love you very, very much. Amy's lower lip trembled. Is Daddy coming home? I pulled her close, fighting back tears. I don't know, baby, but no matter what happens, I promise I'll always be here for you. As I held my daughter, I steeled myself for what was to come. The meeting with Lucy, the inevitable confrontation with Doug, the painful process of untangling our lives. It wouldn't be easy, but looking at Amy, I knew it was necessary. Tomorrow, I'd face Lucy and whatever revelations she brought. But tonight I'd hold my daughter and find strength in her love. Because no matter what happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I'd fight with everything I had to protect our future, with or without Doug. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as I sipped my coffee, steeling myself for the day ahead. Amy was at preschool, and I had a mountain of work to tackle before my meeting with Lucy. The thought of facing her made my stomach churn, but I was determined to get answers. My phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Frowning, I answered. Hello, is this Melissa Thompson? A stern voice asked. Yes, this is she. Mrs. Thompson, this is Officer Jenkins from the City Police Department. I'm calling about your husband, Douglas Thompson. My heart stopped. What about Doug? Is he okay? There was a pause, heavy with unspoken dread. There's been an accident, ma'am. Your husband's car collided with another vehicle on Highway 16. He's been taken to Memorial Hospital. The room spun. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Is he alive? Yes, ma'am, but his condition is critical. You should get to the hospital as soon as possible. I mumbled a thank you and hung up, my mind reeling. Doug, accident, hospital. The words swirled in my head, refusing to make sense. With shaking hands, I dialed Sophie. Mom, I choked out when she answered. I need you to pick up Amy from preschool. Doug's been in an accident. Oh, honey, she gasped. I'm on my way. Go to the hospital. I'll take care of Amy. The drive to Memorial was a blur. I parked haphazardly, rushing through the emergency room doors. A harried nurse directed me to the ICU waiting area, where a grim-faced doctor approached me. Mrs. Thompson? He asked. I nodded, unable to speak. Your husband is in surgery. He suffered severe internal injuries and a head trauma. The next 24 hours will be critical. I collapsed into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. Will he make it? The doctor's face softened. We're doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourself for the possibility. His voice faded as I spotted a familiar figure down the hall. Blonde hair, tear-streaked face, a bandage on her forehead. Lucy. Rage surged through me, momentarily displacing my fear. I stood, marching towards her. What are you doing here? I demanded. Lucy's eyes widened in panic. Melissa, I can explain. Explain what? I hissed. Why you're here? Why my husband is fighting for his life? She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was in the car with Doug. We were going to tell you everything today. The world tilted on its axis. You were in the car? You caused this? No, she cried. It wasn't our fault. A truck ran a red light. Doug, he swerved to protect me. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. Even in crisis, Doug had chosen her. A nurse approached, eyeing us warily. Miss Ellison, we need to check your concussion. I watched, numb, as Lucy was led away. She glanced back, her eyes pleading, but I turned away. I couldn't deal with her. Not now. Hours passed in a haze of coffee and hushed conversations. Sophie arrived, squeezing my hand and murmuring comforting words I couldn't process. All I could think about was Doug, lying on an operating table, his life hanging by a thread. Finally, the surgeon emerged, his face grave. Mrs. Thompson, your husband is out of surgery. He's stable, but... I braced myself for the worst. There's been significant brain damage. We won't know the full extent until he wakes up. If he wakes up. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. If he wakes up. The words echoed in my head, a cruel taunt of what might never be. Can I see him? I whispered. The doctor nodded, leading me to Doug's room. I gasped at the sight of him, pale and still, surrounded by beeping machines. This broken man couldn't be my Doug, the father of my child, the center of my world for so long. As I sank into the chair beside his bed, taking his limp hand in mine, I was hit by a staggering realization. Despite everything, the betrayal, the lies, the pain he'd caused, I wasn't ready to let him go. Not like this. In that sterile hospital room, watching Doug's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision, I made a decision. Whatever happened next, whether he lived or died, I would face it head on. For Amy, for myself, and yes, even for Doug. Because some bonds, no matter how frayed, are too strong to break completely. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I made my way to Doug's room. It had been 3 days since the accident, and he'd finally regained consciousness. My emotions were a tangled mess of relief, anger, and dread. As I approached his room, I heard voices. One was Doug's, weak but unmistakable. The other was Lucy's. My blood boiled. I burst through the door, startling them both. Lucy jumped away from Doug's bedside, guilt written all over her face. "Melissa," Doug croaked, his eyes widening, "I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. I turned to Lucy. "Get out, now." She hesitated, looking at Doug. He nodded slightly, and she scurried past me, avoiding eye contact. Once we were alone, I faced my husband. He looked small and broken in the hospital bed, but I steeled my heart against pity. "How long?" I demanded. Doug closed his eyes, sighing. 6 months. The admission hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. Why? My voice cracked. Why her? Why throw away our family? He struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. I didn't mean for it to happen. Lucy, she understood me, made me feel alive again. And I didn't? Tears stung my eyes. What about Amy? Did you think about her at all? Guilt flashed across his face. Of course I did. I love Amy more than anything. Not enough to stay faithful to her mother, I spat. Doug reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Mel, please. I know I messed up, but this accident, it's made me realize what's truly important. I want to make things right." I laughed bitterly. "Make things right? Doug, you were in that car with her. You were going to leave us." He shook his head vehemently. "No, we were coming to talk to you, to confess everything." "How noble of you," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "And now what? You expect me to forgive and forget?" Doug's face crumpled. "I'm asking for a chance, for Amy's sake, if nothing else." The mention of our daughter sent a fresh wave of pain through me. How would I explain this to her? A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Doug's doctor. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson," he greeted us solemnly. "I have your latest test results." The atmosphere in the room shifted, tension crackling in the air. "The head trauma has caused some complications," the doctor explained. "There's a high probability of long-term cognitive and motor function impairment." The words hung heavy between us. Doug would need extensive care and rehabilitation. The implications were staggering. As the doctor continued explaining the prognosis, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. Despite everything, Doug was still Amy's father. Could I really walk away now? But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the secret meetings with Lucy. The life we'd built together was already in ruins. Did I owe him anything more? The doctor left, and silence fell over the room. Doug looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Melissa," he whispered, "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, don't give up on us." I stood there, torn between fury and compassion, between the vows we'd made and the trust he'd shattered. The future I'd imagined for us lay in pieces, and I had no idea how to put it back together, or if I even wanted to. "I can't do this right now," I said finally, my voice trembling. "I need time to think." As I turned to leave, Doug called out, "Mel, wait! What about Amy? What do we tell her?" I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. Without looking back, I replied, "I'll figure it out, like I always do." Stepping into the hallway, I leaned against the wall, my legs weak. The enormity of the situation crashed over me. In a matter of days, my life had been turned upside down. Now I faced an impossible choice: stay and try to rebuild what was broken, or walk away and start anew. As I made my way out of the hospital, one thought echoed in my mind. Whatever I decided, nothing would ever be the same again. The whispers started the moment I stepped into the grocery store. Eyes darted away when I looked up, hushed conversations halted mid-sentence. News travels fast in a small town, and our scandal was the juiciest gossip in years. I grabbed a cart, trying to ignore the stares burning into my back. As I reached for a box of Amy's favorite cereal, a familiar voice made me freeze. "Melissa? Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I turned to face Linda, my next-door neighbor and longtime friend. Her eyes were filled with pity, and I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. "It's fine, Linda," I muttered, attempting a smile. "We're managing." She touched my arm, her voice lowering. "If you need anything at all, just let me know. That Doug, I always thought he was too good to be true." I nodded, fighting back tears. "Thanks. I appreciate it. As I hurried away, I overheard another shopper whisper, "Can you believe it? With Amy's teacher of all people." My hands shook as I grabbed items off the shelves, desperate to finish and escape. But as I rounded the corner to the dairy aisle, I came face to face with Lucy. She looked terrible, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she froze, terror flashing across her face. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, something inside me snapped. "How dare you show your face here?" I hissed, advancing on her. Lucy backed away, hands raised. "Melissa, please, I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my family and you're sorry?" By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching our confrontation with morbid fascination. Lucy's eyes darted around, panicked. "I never meant for any of this to happen. Doug and I—" "Don't you dare say his name," I spat. "You have no right. Do you have any idea what you've done? To me? To Amy?" Tears streamed down Lucy's face. "I've lost everything too. My job, my reputation." "Good," I snarled. "You deserve to lose it all." Suddenly, Sophie appeared at my side, gently grasping my arm. "Melissa, honey, let's go. This isn't the place." I shook her off, my rage building. "No, Mom, she needs to hear this. Everyone needs to hear this." I turned to the gathered crowd, my voice rising. "You want to know the truth? My husband, the man I trusted with my life, my future, betrayed me with this woman, Amy's teacher, and now he's lying in a hospital bed, broken and changed forever, because they were sneaking around behind my back." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Lucy looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. "Melissa, please." She whimpered, "I'm leaving town. You'll never have to see me again." "Running away?" I sneered. "Of course you are. That's what cowards do." Sophie tugged at my arm more insistently. "That's enough, Melissa. Think of Amy." The mention of my daughter's name was like a bucket of cold water. I deflated, suddenly aware of the spectacle I'd created. "You're right," I said quietly. Then to Lucy, "Go. Leave, and pray I never see you again." As Lucy fled, leaving her cart abandoned, I turned to face the crowd. Their expressions ranged from shock to sympathy to poorly concealed excitement at the drama. "Show's over," I announced, my voice cracking. "Go back to your shopping." Sophie guided me out of the store, leaving our groceries behind. As we stepped into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was the hospital. "Mrs. Thompson? Your husband is asking for you. There's been a complication." I closed my eyes, feeling the last threads of my composure unraveling. How much more could I take? Sophie squeezed my hand. "What is it, honey?" I looked at her, tears finally spilling over. "It's Doug. I have to go back to the hospital." As we drove away from the store, leaving behind a wake of gossip and scandal, I realized I was at a crossroads. The life I knew was gone, shattered beyond repair. Now I had to decide. Would I let this break me, or would I find the strength to forge a new path for myself and Amy? With each mile that passed, my resolve hardened. Whatever happened next, I would face it head-on. For better or worse, this was my story now, and I was determined to write my own ending. The courtroom felt suffocating as I sat across from Doug, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. My own attorney, Sarah, squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You've got this, Melissa," she murmured. "Remember, we have all the evidence. He can't weasel out of this." I nodded, steeling myself as the judge entered. This was it, the culmination of months of legal battles, emotional turmoil, and sleepless nights. As the proceedings began, I found myself drifting, remembering the night everything changed. The necklace under the bed, the confrontation at the hospital, the scandal that rocked our small town. It felt like a lifetime ago. Doug's lawyer presented their case first, painting a picture of a remorseful husband, a victim of circumstance. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream out his lies. When it was our turn, Sarah methodically laid out the evidence, the emails, the text messages, the financial records showing Doug's secret expenditures on Lucy. With each revelation, I watched Doug shrink in his seat, the facade of confidence crumbling. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add?" I stood, my legs shaky but my voice strong. "Your Honor, for years I believed in the sanctity of my marriage, in the man I thought Doug was, but that man doesn't exist. The real Doug betrayed not just me, but our daughter Amy. He risked everything, our family, our future, for a fleeting affair." I turned to face Doug directly, meeting his eyes for the first time in months. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice, for myself and for Amy, We deserve better than the lies and betrayal you've subjected us to, and now we're taking back our lives." As I sat down, a hush fell over the courtroom. The judge nodded solemnly, then delivered her verdict. The settlement was more than I dared hope for. Primary custody of Amy, a substantial alimony, and child support that would ensure Amy's future was secure. Doug's face crumpled as the judge detailed his visitation rights, supervised only, given his recent erratic behavior. As we left the courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't just the legal victory, it was the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself, for Amy, for the life we deserved. Outside, Sophie was waiting with Amy. My daughter ran to me, and I scooped her up, holding her tight. "Mommy, why are you crying?" she asked, wiping a tear from my cheek. I smiled through the tears. "These are happy tears, sweetheart. Mommy just won a big game." Sophie hugged us both. "I'm so proud of you, Melissa. You've been so strong through all of this." As we walked to the car, I spotted Doug across the parking lot. Our eyes met briefly, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved. But then he turned away, shoulders slumped, defeated. That night, after tucking Amy into bed, I sat on the porch swing, gazing at the stars. The future stretched out before me, uncertain, yes, but full of possibility. My phone buzzed with messages of support from friends and coworkers. The community that had once whispered behind my back now rallied around me. I'd emerged from the scandal not as a victim, but as a survivor. As I scrolled through the messages, I paused on one from Linda, my neighbor. "Melissa, you're an inspiration to all of us. If you ever want to share your story, let me know. It could help so many women." I considered her words a seed of an idea taking root. Perhaps there was a way to turn this pain into purpose, to help others facing similar battles. The porch door creaked open, and Sophie joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "To new beginnings," she said, clinking her glass against mine. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "To new beginnings," I echoed. As we sat in comfortable silence, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in months, I felt ready to face it. I had survived the storm, emerged stronger, and now, with Amy by my side and a support system I never knew I had, I was ready to write the next chapter of our lives. On my own terms, with my head held high, the future was mine to shape, and I intended to make it a bright one. For myself, for Amy, and for any woman who needed to know that there was life and triumph after betrayal.
"I'm going to remarry my 18-year-old girlfriend. You're in the way, so disappear." "What? So, you want a divorce, is that it?" "Exactly." "What is that? Don't joke about things like that. You guys have always treated me carelessly, haven't you? It's too late to get flustered after I've brought up divorce." "What? I'm not flustered at all. I'm actually mad that you brought up divorce to Mom first. Don't raise your voice so much. How can you stay so calm? I'm angry too." "Got it. Shall we get divorced then?" "Oh, you'll grant me a divorce? That makes things easier." "What? Mom? Is that okay?" After years of juggling child-rearing, shuttling kids to extracurricular activities, and caring for my father-in-law, my husband suddenly proposed a divorce. When I casually agreed to the divorce and mentioned it too lightly, my eldest daughter shouted in surprise. Ethan was alone, celebrating with a fist pump. My eldest daughter seemed not to understand my words, but this is fine. If everything goes as I expect, everything should resolve smoothly. In reality, a month after I blocked his calls, my ex-husband came to our house. I am a 37-year-old part-time worker. I married Ethan, who is 2 years older than me, when I was 24 due to a shotgun wedding, and we were blessed with 2 children after the marriage. Our daughter Kristen, who turns 13 this year, has started middle school, and our son Ted has turned 6 and started elementary school. With the children reaching middle and elementary school ages, childcare should have become a bit easier, but the birth of our second son, Sean, 2 years ago has kept us in a constant state of busyness. However, I have strong support, so I can manage household chores, childcare, and work. Ted. You need your gym bag today, right? Prepare it yourself. I'll prepare it after breakfast. That's what you said last week, but you forgot it, didn't you? Prepare it first. Seeing me always busy, my eldest daughter naturally started to support me. She is already showing the temperament of a tough mother, even more maternal than I am. I rely on my eldest daughter's help with childcare, which honestly helps a lot. However, I also feel pathetic having to rely on a child for help with childcare. Still, I depend on my eldest daughter because I am also caring for George, my father-in-law. Megan, I'm sorry, but I need to go to the toilet. Can you take me? Understood. Let's get up slowly then. I'm always sorry about this. My father-in-law always looks apologetic towards me. However, I have never considered him a burden. Though he requires care, he is only weak in the legs and can manage daily activities with some support. Thus, it's more about support than care, really. George is 70, and my mother-in-law Dorothy is 68. Since my mother-in-law alone can't fully support him, our family has been living with my in-laws for about 3 years now. Living with my in-laws is often fraught with trouble, but fortunately, it hasn't involved me much. Welcome home, thanks for the hard work, Bert. Lunch is ready, you'll eat, right? Thank you. I appreciate it, as always. We're the ones being helped here, don't worry about it. Oh, by the way, I fixed a button on Ted's uniform that had come off. I did it without asking, I hope that was okay? You fixed it? That's very helpful, thank you. My mother-in-law supports us with housework and childcare. Also, my father-in-law entertains my eldest son when he returns from school. When I was pregnant with my second son, they helped me a lot. Though we came to my in-laws to support them, it feels like the roles have completely reversed. Therefore, I feel indebted to my in-laws, but they always say not to worry about it. I'm always causing trouble, I know. Living with your husband's parents must be tough, but you accepted us. I'm truly grateful. That's right. I couldn't support him alone. Besides, we're happy to live with our grandchildren. You might think we're helping you with housework and childcare, but that's not it. We do it because we enjoy it, and it brings us joy. After 3 years of living with my in-laws, I've been leading a busy yet enjoyable life. However, there is one thing I'm concerned about. In these 3 years, my husband's attitude has gradually changed. One morning, it was a usual scene. You didn't hand over the notice from yesterday, did you? I always tell you to make sure to hand it over. I just forgot yesterday. Megan. I'm sorry, but could you buy some sewing thread at the dollar store on your way back from work today? Understood. Could you also buy a new nail clipper? The one we're using now is getting dull. This ordinary scene seems to annoy my husband. You have it good, getting help with the housework and childcare. How can you say that? You don't help, so you wouldn't know, but household chores and childcare are tough. Plus, I even have to go to work. Work. It's just an easy part-time job, isn't it? What's the matter with you? Did something bad happen at work? What? Dad, are you taking it out on us? It's not like that. Some people handle housework, childcare, and work all by themselves, so I just mean don't be too spoiled. After placing his toast back on the plate, my husband left for work. I get complaints from my husband. He seems displeased that I receive help from my eldest daughter and my in-laws. However, since my eldest daughter and in-laws are on my side, my husband often retreats in a bad mood. Feeling uncomfortable without allies, he has started to reduce his time at home. Welcome home. You're late again today. What about dinner? I don't need it. I'm just going to take a shower and go to sleep. My husband comes home late and has started to go out alone on weekends. He sulks because he doesn't have the family's support, although it's his own attitude that causes this, making it feel like a fourth child has emerged. But my husband is almost 40, an adult, and a father. I can't deal with him sulking like a child forever. Hey, even if you don't help with the housework, Could you at least help a little with the childcare? Ask your mom and them for that. Kristen has started going to cram school, right? I have to pick her up because she gets home late. And Ted has joined a soccer club, hasn't he? Sometimes on weekends, I have to take him a bit far for practice games. I can't really ask your mother to do the driving, can I? I'm not doing any driving around. Why should I have to drive the kids around at night or on weekends when I'm tired from work? You have a part-time job and you can drive, so you should do it. If I take the kids to and from their activities, I won't be able to do anything at home. I'll have to rely even more on your parents. I understand you're tired from work, but please, help a little. You said you'd help when the kids started their activities, didn't you? I said I'd pay for it. If you can't drive them, then make them quit their activities. My husband's dissatisfaction is directed not only at me, but also at the children who don't take his side. It seems the biggest child of all requires the most attention. Since I can't make the children quit their activities, I decided to handle their transportation myself. But I can't rely on my in-laws any more than I already do. So, I try to keep from adding to their burden as much as possible. However, the driving, taking 1 to 2 hours each time, inevitably cuts into the efficiency of my housework and childcare. To make up for the lost efficiency, I've started waking up early and cutting back on sleep to get housework and childcare done. I use every spare moment for housework and childcare. Exhausted from non-stop housework and childcare, I also go to my part-time job and continue to support my father-in-law. This unsustainable effort can't continue forever. Having reached my limit just on grit, I consulted my husband again, but he flatly refused, saying, "What? I told you I wouldn't do the driving." So, I continue to transport the children, hiding my fatigue. I'm home. Welcome back. Well done, Megan. Are you okay? Isn't the driving tough? I'm fine. I'll get dinner ready. I force a smile to hide my fatigue. I can't rely on my in-laws any more than I already do. I know I should openly rely on my in-laws, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Unfortunately, bad things seem to happen one after another. My father-in-law suddenly passed away from acute myocardial infarction. At the hospital, my daughter, my mother-in-law, and I cried as we looked at my father-in-law, who had passed away in his sleep. My son was teary-eyed and looked down in silence. It's understandable that 2-year-old Sean doesn't grasp the situation and looks confused. However, why is my husband grinning? Well, Dad was over 70, so it can't be helped, right? No more needing to help with the toilet or the bath. Let's try to think positively. My husband is not the kind of person who makes jokes to cheer us up. He probably means what he said. Even if it were a joke, it would be in extremely poor taste. But right now, sadness overwhelmingly outweighs anger. So, we ignored my husband and mourned the loss of my father-in-law. We better get started on the funeral arrangements. Our reaction probably wasn't what he had hoped for. He left the hospital room with a dismissive remark, increasing the emotional distance between us and him. I'll be late again today, so I don't need dinner. 2 years after my father-in-law's death, my husband continues to do as he pleases, still not helping with housework or childcare, and I'm still doing the driving for our 2 children and now also for Sean to kindergarten. Moreover, he comes home later than before, sometimes doesn't return on weekends, and has become even more reckless with money. Hey! Did you use the household money again? So what? Most of that money is what I earned, isn't it? We have 3 kids, you know? We still need a lot of money, so stop wasting it. Shut up. You should just keep quiet and take care of the house. Our relationship had already cooled off. But we haven't divorced yet, partly because of the children, but also because I'm worried about my mother-in-law. I'm sorry that Ethan keeps causing trouble. You can dump him anytime, you know? My mother-in-law sometimes tells me it's okay to divorce, but if we were to divorce, my husband and mother-in-law would be left alone. I'm worried about leaving my kindly mother-in-law alone with such a husband. So, whenever she brings up divorce, I just laugh it off. What are you saying? Even if my relationship with my husband has cooled, having 3 adorable children and a kind mother-in-law is enough for me. However, the time to end such a life has come. My mother-in-law has suffered a stroke. Though her life was saved, my mother-in-law developed cognitive impairment as a result of her condition. The view from that mountain is really beautiful. I really love that view. I went there last week. Wow, really? I'd like to see that view from the mountain someday too. My eldest daughter listens to her grandmother with a smile. However, my mother-in-law did not go to the mountain last week. Due to her cognitive impairment from the stroke, she also has memory issues and talks about trips from years ago as if they happened recently. Moreover, she repeats the same story multiple times. My eldest daughter continues to listen with a smile until my mother-in-law is satisfied. Did Mom finish her meal? It took a long time today. Yeah. But she wasn't slow eating, she was just caught up in her stories. I see. That's a sign she's still energetic. We need to keep her healthy. Right. But I'm a bit worried. Earlier, she reached out her hand to a completely different place from her spoon. To keep her healthy, we need to cover for her like that. I was worried whether I could provide enough support when my mother-in-law fell, but my eldest daughter helps with the caregiving and the household chores, so we're managing. Seeing how my daughter supports me, my eldest son has also started to take care of his younger brother. I've come to realize that this is what it means to support each other as a family. It's just unfortunate that my husband's cooperation isn't part of this. Why doesn't that guy help with anything around the house? Even Ted is looking after Sean. Don't call your father that guy. Father? Can someone like him even be called a father? It's no wonder my eldest daughter is exasperated with her husband. Well, I think it's much better than being bothered by him. My husband still comes home late and goes out on weekends. It's a problem that he spends money, but I'm not interested in what he does outside. So, it's better for me if he just stays uninvolved. Thinking this, I had been ignoring my husband, but about 6 months after my mother-in-law's fall, my husband dropped a huge bombshell on our family. I'm going to remarry my 18-year-old girlfriend. You're in the way, so disappear. What? My husband, returning home after the kids had gone to bed, suddenly confronted me with a divorce. I was speechless, my mind went blank. Though I've been managing household chores, childcare, and work with some help since coming to live with my in-laws. I also took care of my father-in-law, and now I'm caring for my mother-in-law. Do I really have to be confronted with a divorce from a husband who hasn't helped with the house or his parents at all? And to remarry an 18-year-old? No matter how hard I try, I can't understand what my husband is saying. So, you want a divorce, is that it? Exactly. What is that? Don't joke about things like that. I thought she was asleep, but my eldest daughter had been awake. She couldn't stand our conversation and burst in. You guys have always treated me carelessly, haven't you? It's too late to get flustered after I've brought up divorce. What? I'm not flustered at all. I'm actually mad that you brought up divorce to Mom first. My eldest daughter's anger was so strong, I couldn't even talk to my husband. It's nice that she's angry for me, but this could wake up my sons. Kristen, don't raise your voice so much. How can you stay so calm? I'm angry too. First, let your father and I talk, so go back to your room. No. I'm staying here. It seemed my eldest daughter had no intention of leaving the room. She quieted down but crossed her arms and continued to glare at her father without moving. It's not ideal to discuss divorce in front of the kids, but it can't be helped. So, you've been coming home late and going out on weekends for that girlfriend, huh? Yes. We've been together for about a year now. She's a girl who works part-time at my regular pub. Unlike you, she's friendly and kind. That should be called an affair, not a relationship, but that's not the point I want to emphasize. She's still 18, right? Are her parents okay with this? Her parents are strongly opposed. If she marries me, they're going to disown her. How can you marry without her parents' consent? We don't need her parents' consent. We can get married. That's why we've been patiently dating this past year. It's not about the law, but about human connections and decency. I was at a loss, unable to understand my husband. Looking at my daughter's face, she had an expression of complete disbelief. So, her parents don't agree, but you've confirmed her feelings, right? Yes, of course. We love each other. I didn't need to hear that. I don't want her to say too much in front of my daughter. At this point, I don't care about the divorce or the affair. What worries me is my mother-in-law after the divorce. I looked at a photo of my mother-in-law on a shelf in the corner of the room. It was taken when she was healthy, smiling on a mountain hike. Looking at my mother-in-law's smiling face, I remembered she had always said I could leave my husband anytime. Understood. So, shall we get divorced? Oh, you'll grant me a divorce? That makes things easier. What? Mom? Is that okay? My casual agreement to the divorce and my light mention of it shocked my eldest daughter. Ethan was alone, celebrating with a fist pump. I can't accept this. This is fine. What's fine? This is fine. I repeated the same words, trying to communicate with my eyes to my eldest daughter that I wasn't just accepting the divorce. It seemed my feelings had reached her, who had been with me as family. However, my husband, who hadn't been part of us as a family, failed to notice the silent conversation between my daughter and me. If everything goes as I expect, everything should work out smoothly. The decision to divorce is made, but there are children involved, and we need to discuss the details. Therefore, I cannot leave the house immediately. Of course, it's okay for me to take the children, right? Obviously. Better take them away. They're just a nuisance. Understood. But it's impossible to just take the children and leave immediately, so wait a bit. Then, you can stay here until you find a place to move. I'll be spending time with my girlfriend. But get out in 2 weeks. I can't have you sticking around forever. As my husband left the house happily, my eldest daughter looked at me anxiously. It's okay. Do you think a person like that can be happy? Surely, your grandfather in heaven will punish him. I tried to alleviate my daughter's anxiety with a smile. Seeing me smile, she too smiled back, reassured. The next day, I reported the divorce to my mother-in-law. Mother, I'm sorry. I've decided to get a divorce. It's okay. I'm sorry for all the trouble up to now. Though the conversation went on, my mother-in-law probably didn't fully grasp its meaning. Yet, her words were comforting to me. 2 weeks later, I left the house with my 3 children. The place we moved to wasn't far from my in-laws. This was to avoid changing the children's schools and to continue my part-time job, but there was another reason as well. The divorce proceeded smoothly as I didn't press the issue of the affair. I thought it more important to quickly sever ties with my husband and ensure a smooth transition to receiving child support, rather than arguing about compensation. However, in return for not fussing about the affair, I took most of our savings and the car. My ex-husband, eager to start his life with his 18-year-old new wife, accepted these terms without fully understanding how much it would cost him later. Mom, you think about 2 months? I think about 1 month. You think he lacks that much persistence? Surely he can last about 2 months, right? I explained to my daughter why I divorced her father so easily. Satisfied with my explanation, she looked forward to that time. A month after the divorce, my ex-husband called my smartphone. See, just about a month. Not yet. I don't think he's been pushed to his limit yet. Let's wait and see. After that, my ex-husband started bombarding me with calls. At night, he would call every 10 minutes. It became impossible to relax at home, so I blocked his number. Since I had told him where we lived, there wouldn't be a problem if he couldn't reach me by phone. When he was driven to his limit, he would surely come to the house. A month after blocking him, my ex-husband finally showed up at our house. Please. Come back. I was wrong. Through the intercom, my husband pleaded loudly for help. It was night, and to avoid bad rumors in the neighborhood, I reluctantly let him into the house to talk. I sent the younger son to another room with the eldest, and I listened to my ex-husband's story with my daughter. Well, it was probably just as I had expected. I have an idea of what happened, but could you explain it anyway? After you guys left, I started living with my remarriage partner and my mom, just the three of us at her home. But the new wife couldn't handle taking care of mom and gave up, right? Yes. I didn't think she'd give up so easily, even middle schooler Kristen could do it. You know. It's obvious, isn't it? Taking care of parents isn't about persistence. Kristen could take care of mom because we've always lived as a family. I could take care of your parents because they were kind to me and felt like my real parents. Did you really think that just getting married and saying, "This is your mother-in-law, take care of her," would work? That is. You probably pushed all the housework onto her too, right? Anyone would hate that. Especially an 18-year-old. So? Did you divorce her already? No, we hadn't registered the marriage yet. We were planning to on our anniversary. Lucky for her, then. She dumped you easily, huh? I've been there, and I know that young women can find older men attractive. I bet the 18-year-old new wife was serious about marrying my ex-husband. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fought her parents' opposition and moved in with my in-laws. She must have been informed about my mother-in-law beforehand. However, the reality of married life and caregiving must have been much harder than she imagined. For an 18-year-old with little life experience, it would be tough to overcome such trials. If they were to make their married life successful, my ex-husband's support would have been crucial, but he helped with nothing. Moreover, it's dubious whether he even explained the situation adequately or prepared her appropriately. But she cut ties with her parents to marry you, right? How are you planning to take responsibility? Her parents said they'd cut ties, but they didn't in the end. Now she's being sheltered by them. Sheltered? What do you mean? Did you? Of course, I went after her when she left the house. But her parents said, "Our daughter is scared, so don't come anymore." This is a marital issue. It's natural for us to discuss it together. Yet, they say if I persist, they'll consult a lawyer. A 40-year-old man pressuring an 18-year-old girl is scary enough. If a daughter runs back home from a man, it's natural for parents to protect her. Moreover, the mention of a lawyer instead of the police shows how serious her parents are. The police cannot act without evidence of harm, but involving a lawyer might make it easier for them to intervene, and even if the police do not act, a civil lawsuit might be possible. Moreover, although people may speak of cutting ties, family bonds are not so easily severed. I cannot imagine ever cutting ties with my children, no matter what they do. However, my ex-husband seems to be someone who can imagine cutting ties with his children. I don't care about you and your new wife anymore. But you came here alone, is Grandma okay? Mom's already asleep, so she's fine. I've also installed a monitoring camera. Grandma is alone at home? I can't believe it. Give me the keys now. My eldest daughter snatched the keys from my ex-husband and rushed to our mother-in-law's place without stopping. What are you thinking? I'm at my limit. Whatever I do, you ask about Megan? About Kristen? About Ted and Sean? Suddenly she starts saying things that make no sense. My wife ran away, and I can't take care of Mom alone anymore. Please, come back. The reason Mom doesn't rely on you and calls our names instead, is it because you couldn't be the family she needed? Being related by blood doesn't make you family. If you were really family, you'd understand what Mom wants to say. Kristen and I have never thought Mom was saying nonsense. Realizing how foolish his actions had been, my ex-husband hung his head and fell silent. If my ex-husband has come to regret his past actions, that's an ideal turn of events for me. I handed him a brochure I had prepared. I have no intention of remarrying you. But you can't take care of Mom, can you? How about we get her into a care facility? I suggested to my ex-husband that we place our mother-in-law in a nearby care facility. It would be much safer for her to be there than with my incapable ex-husband. Additionally, visiting her at the facility would allow us to see her without having to meet my ex-husband. The brochure I handed to my ex-husband was for a facility near our house. We hadn't moved too far away after leaving the marital home, partly for this reason. Okay. I'll do that. With this, I achieved my goal. I managed to divorce and ensure that my children and I could see my mother-in-law whenever we wanted. Shall we head to your house then? What does that mean? My ex-husband, mistakenly thinking that his remorse and regret had moved me, hoped for a positive response. Don't misunderstand. I'm going to pick up Kristen. She rushed out suddenly earlier, and since it's night, even if it's close by, it's natural for me to go pick up our child, right? Realizing he had been mistaken, my ex-husband's shoulders fell. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. It had been 2 months since we last visited the family home, but I didn't meet with my mother-in-law. I simply picked up my eldest daughter and returned home. We can meet with my mother-in-law anytime now, so hearing from my daughter was enough for now. Grandma said she went to the mountain yesterday too. She's still so lively, huh? It's not fair that only sister gets to see Grandma. I wanted to see Grandma too. It's late now, so be patient. We'll be able to see Grandma from now on. It looks like your plan worked, didn't it? Yes, this way I managed to separate that man from Grandma. As I drove home, thinking about being able to meet Grandma again made me happy, and I found myself humming a tune. Later, my mother-in-law was admitted to the care facility. Mother, how are you feeling? Any changes? Yes, I've been feeling quite well recently. According to the staff at the facility, my mother-in-law had been somber and quiet right after admission. However, as my children and I began visiting, her mood lightened and she started talking more. With my mother-in-law in the facility, my ex-husband was left living alone at the family home. It seems he finally gave up on the new wife after her parents threatened to consult a lawyer. I'm just relieved he didn't become a stalker. However, the girl must have been quite frightened. While I understand his desire not to lose a young wife, as an adult, he should have known when to step back. Later, I learned that around the time my ex-husband started complaining and behaving strangely, he had made a major mistake at work. It was a big enough blunder to push him into a less influential position at his company. Feeling ostracized at work while I managed home affairs smoothly with family support apparently didn't sit well with him. As he began to complain, finding no allies at home either, he ended up relying on a teenager. Being relied upon by a younger person probably made him feel validated. Such childish reasons indeed. Also, it seems that not only his wife but also his mother had forsaken him. Nice to meet you. It's a lovely day, isn't it? Despite clearly remembering us, it seems my mother-in-law has forgotten that my ex-husband is her son. His childlike behavior led to our divorce and ultimately left him truly alone. Now alone, my ex-husband's mental state worsened, and he continued to make mistakes at work. One mistake led to another, resulting in demotion and pay cuts. Given his mental state, he probably should take a break from work, but he can't afford to. Since I took most of our savings in exchange for not fussing about the affair during our divorce, he's left without much money. Still, he needs to work to pay the child support for our 3 kids and the care facility fees for my mother-in-law. Being without support is a tough situation. To support the 3 kids, I found a job. Sean is still small, but Kristen and Ted help look after him. Having real support is truly reassuring.